I want to grow. Like, if it doesn't hurt, you're not growing. You're going to get lucky whenever you put yourself in a situation to be lucky.
I don't know what I'm doing. We don't know what the heck we're doing, but we're doing our best.
As iron sharpens iron, one man sharpens another.
I want to help people. That's why I do it.
At that point, Lopez rips his shirt off and he's like, hold on, this is my last resort.
There's just no duplication for hard work. There's no duplication for doing the right things.
Succeed and then put your hand back and help someone else. We're all over the place, just a group of friends trying to all connect and help each other grow. Welcome back to Men in the Arena. We have a new guest today. His name is Ryan Cowan, and we have a couple people that are back again. So I will have Ryan Cowan introduce himself and tell us a little bit about him.
Yeah, excited to join you guys. Again, my name is Ryan. Went to Kent State with Steve, Tyler, and Connor here. So fellow Northeast Ohioan, and currently live in Dallas, Texas. The political science and organizational communication at Kent. Now work for a company called Gartner, technology research and advisory in account management, and actually just moved into sales management there. Yeah.
Awesome. Did you say how many years you've been doing it?
Oh, no, so I started at Gartner, not this last March, the March previously. So been March 2017 in this role for about a year and a half, and transitioning Jan 1 into the sales management role. So excited for another chapter with the company. They moved me down to Fort Myers, Florida, actually, initially in March of 17. And then in April of this year, they moved our department out to Dallas. So been another adventure for me here. So I'm excited to see how long I'm in this area, and excited for another adventure with good company.
Awesome, man. Hey, and congrats on the promotion. That's really awesome.
Thank you.
Big dog.
Appreciate it.
Yep. So today we're going to be talking about networking and how we utilize it in our day-to-day. It's one of the most important things, I think, in any occupation, just being able to go out, meet people, and try to have a win-win relationship like we talked about on the last call. If you can help someone, they can help you. You never know where it'll take you. One thing I wanted to start with is how whenever I was networking, trying to get into the medical field, I used to try to meet 2 people a day at the gym. It was just something that I kind of made a staple in my day. It made me feel uncomfortable going out and just trying to make a connection with someone random that you've never met before. Every day I would just try to talk to 2 people. And it was something that I practiced, and I feel like it really helped me out. So I'll let you guys lead with maybe one thing that you use to really help you network in your day-to-day.
I actually just read something really good in a book called The Curious Mind the other day. And it's ask one good question a day and listen to the answer. And I mean, that seems pretty simple, but like, how often do we ask a question and like truly not listen to the answer, like what that person's saying back? We ask it and we're like thinking to ourselves, that's a good question, and we're in it to receive, whatever sort of like praise or whatever it is we want to hear back. But we kind of, just we don't truly listen to that answer for what it is and what that person's giving to us. So ask that question, have it be really meaningful, and truly listen to the answer. And that's just kind of like your meet 2 people a day, ask one good question a day, and that could lead to networking. And
Yeah, I like that, Connor. Something that one of my mentors actually mentioned to me that's pretty important. Something I like to live by is I don't want to listen to respond. I want to listen to understand. So he's constantly telling me, when you're listening to somebody, when you're listening to maybe feedback, coaching, really anything, listen to understand and then respond. For me, when I'm networking, it's not necessarily a deliberate practice as often as it should be. That's the other thing. Connor, you and I, again, and Lopez as well, we've talked a lot this year about deliberate practice. For me, it's been maybe 30 minutes a day of practicing guitar, 30 minutes a day of shooting free throws, just something where my mind's solely on one thing. With networking, for me, I'm relatively introverted compared to some. So I've got to be very deliberate in going out of my way to kind of making connections where it's, like you said, Steve, not necessarily as easy. So being deliberate and listening to understand.
I would agree. I know Douglas is really good at networking. It seems like the guy knows everyone in Cleveland. Seems like he has relationships that are long lasting in different age groups all over. So, what's one thing you do, Douglas, that you feel gives you the ability to network so well?
Good question. I appreciate the compliment there. But one thing mostly is once you do network with a group of, or with, I guess, an individual, and you have a group of people, allowing them to network amongst each other. And then honestly, the people that you've connected with build relationships with each other, which only build your relationships with those people even more. So really trying to formulate strong groups versus just strong interpersonal relationships with singular people, but bringing people together as a whole.
That's
Which is
good.
Something.
That's good because, dude, how
Yeah.
often do we come together as like a sense of, we want community or tribe or a sense of like togetherness. That's why I think that's oftentimes why people go to church. They gather every Sunday
Yeah.
and they get together, and it's a community of people. So it's like, we're all gathered around today to celebrate one thing. And if you're networking and you're all in it and you got energy going together, that creates a lot, that energy compounds, and I think it's huge. That just can go so far at that point. Great point.
And it might be uncomfortable, but it goes back to what you guys have already said. It's like I truthfully am relatively introverted, but I forced myself a number of years ago to be extroverted, and it still doesn't really come naturally. And there's hiccups along the road, but if it's you're forcing yourself to be uncomfortable, and it's worth it in the end. And when you see that it's worth it, and you have good opportunities brought your way due to different groups you've met and people who know each other within those groups, it makes you want to keep doing it, of course. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that I find interesting is how you guys say you're introverts. I don't think anyone in our group is a real true introvert. Introvert, you really don't want to talk to anyone. Maybe it's more difficult for you, but I think you put yourself in the position to be an extrovert.
I'll challenge you there. I actually had a mentor of mine here at work, and I never necessarily viewed myself as an introvert either. But what I kind of understood from that is it's about how do you recharge. For me personally, I recharge through being alone, being by myself, be it walking 9 holes of golf alone, sitting in my room reading a book, something like that. When I need to recharge, that's how I do it. As an extrovert, if you need to recharge, and this is what was explained to me, you need to be in big groups. You need to go out with a lot of people in maybe, let's say, to an arena or to a festival or something where you're around a lot of people. And you recharge that way by being social. So I never really thought of it like that until relatively recently. I viewed myself as extroverted, but when I'm recharging, it's when I'm alone. It's when I'm by myself, and kind of realizing that being an extroverted introvert is relatively common. And I think that's where I really align myself, at least.
I think life kind of comes with some sort of like an analogy is it's like a battery pack. Like I think we all kind of have our own battery packs, and we have to plug them back in, and we have to have some introspection and carefully come back to those ideas that make us wholesome and who we are. Because if we don't, we can kind of get lost in all the noise of the world, and we can hear everybody else's ideas and kind of lose track of what is really meaningful to us. And I think you're right, Cowan. I think that if you're a little bit introverted and you know that, that's a good thing. Just go back to your quiet place, recharge, come back to the world, and then share everything you have to offer, because you have a lot of beautiful gifts, but like you have to think about that.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I find very fascinating is what would you categorize me as?
I think that's tough. I don't know, because I think a lot of people seem as if they are extroverted, but when it comes to how do you recharge individually, I don't necessarily know that we dig deep enough to understand that. I don't know if I'd be able to say that I did know. What do you feel?
First thing, well, let me interject here. When Ryan says kind of being by yourself to recharge, I would say that, Stephen, you are an extrovert, because I'm a little more like Ryan in that if I'm taking a long drive, I'll take some time to myself. The first thing you do on a long drive is call one of your buddies and you keep the conversation going. You keep talking, you keep communicating. So that makes you a little more extroverted. Sometimes if I have an hour in the car, I recharge like Ryan, and you take that hour to be amongst just yourself.
Well, whenever you drive as much as I do,
that's solid.
I love this. I don't know, man. I get where you're coming from, but I think everyone needs time to themselves. It doesn't matter if you're an extrovert or introvert, in my opinion.
Of course, yeah.
We all need time alone to think, to get things organized, to put yourself in a good spot. You know, in my opinion, I would say then everyone is somewhat introverted. I don't know one single person that always wants to be around people and never wants to be alone.
No, I don't think that's necessarily what it is. But like for me, when I think about, trying to think of a good example, I think Connor Lozier is a fantastic example. When I see Connor really come most alive and really become the best him, right, where he's recharging. I think a lot of that is when he's in groups of people where he's just in an environment where he can interact, and that seems to be a reach, and it might not be the case, but it seems to be a recharge for him. Um, I struggle when I'm feeling just kind of like burnt out. I don't come to life in a group of people when I'm burnt out. It makes it even worse for me. I need to go and be kind of alone and I guess be a little introverted. Whereas I think Connor's Lozier is a little bit different in the sense that he recharges through other people. But I don't know, just a thought.
Yeah.
Hey,
No, I understand. And look, it's all how you view things, your
Yeah.
perspective on it. So I get where you're coming from. I just, everyone's going to have their own piece on how exactly that fits to them or doesn't. So,
Leffler, what are you doing
what-
out there, man? I mean,
Yeah.
you got a lot of, you just practicing Vipassana meditations, kind of looking at the sky.
It's windy out here. I felt
Looking
bad.
at
I
the
saw I
palm
had you guys
trees.
on mute. I was just listening. Didn't you say you should listen?
Listen, understand.
Now I'm
Yeah,
really
now I understand.
wondering what's up out there. Like, are you thinking? Do you think you have more time split? Like, what's your split? Like, are you spending a lot of time just talking? Do you have a lot of alone
I'm a
time?
talker. I'll talk to a wall. I'll talk to my cat if nobody else will listen. I'll talk to my dog. I'll talk to anything that's willing to lend me an ear.
Talking to a wall could get dangerous, though.
It could, yeah. People might put you away for that. No, but I will say there are times where after I've done X amount of sales calls, done a lunch, or just had a really busy day, the last thing I want to do is come home and talk to my significant other or talk to anybody. So I've always identified myself as an extreme extrovert, but I do have some introverted tendencies after a long day of, talking to others. So I've never really challenged myself on it. I've always categorized myself as extrovert and never thought twice about it. But there are definitely times where I like my alone time to recharge and play video games, watch Netflix, whatever, veg out, read a book, and not have to worry about holding a conversation. But there are more times where I feel like I'd much rather be around, a group of people and just shooting it
Yeah.
about whatever, anything.
Yeah.
So rhetorically, from there, I guess a question I have then to bring up is, as someone maybe who's extremely introverted watching, how do they put themselves in a position to not fall behind from a networking perspective, given their personality trait and their place of comfort? Because I know it can be really difficult to be extroverted when you're extremely introverted, but you don't want to fall behind in your professional career because of it. I don't know.
Well, one thing that I could see being important is finding a career that best suits your introverted personality. You know that if you're extremely introverted and that's something that you're comfortable with and that you want to keep the same, then you're probably going to want to find a job that's going to suit that properly. If it's something you want to change, then you have to make yourself uncomfortable.
Be
You have to-
comfortable being uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
And leverage the power of your introvertedness. I think introverts in a lot of ways are always carefully studying and observing the world and people and kind of what's going on around them. And Ryan, you and I spent a lot of time on the peak performance kind of flow chart. And at the end of our flow chart, guys, just to give you a brief rundown, it comes back to service, which leads to flow. And service is what I think introverts can take a fine eye to, and they can say, how can I use these powers of observation and careful thought to give back to the world? And if you really position it that way, you can have just a couple really, really, really meaningful conversations, whereas extroverts are probably having 20, 30, 40, however many conversations they're having in a day, meaningful, but at the same time, the introverts can take that and say, I'm going to put a lot into these couple conversations I have and give it my all, so.
And when an introvert like that speaks, people listen because they speak so sparingly that all of a sudden the attention really is on them. And
Yeah.
generally,
Yeah.
if they've done the things you've said, they have studied and they'll have something important to say.
Yeah. So I have a question for you, Ryan. Seeing
Mhm.
that you categorize yourself as an introvert, how have you been able to utilize networking to your benefit with maybe not being as extrovert as, you think other people could be?
I think with the different traits and just general strengths that we all have, it's been easy for me personally to take being what I would consider an extroverted introvert and turn that into maybe a personality type that doesn't struggle that much on the extroverted side. Having a strength of leadership and always wanting to coach and always wanting to be in a position of maybe helping others reach their goals, reach their potential, things like that. It makes it easy uh, to put myself in uncomfortable situations, knowing that my why is kind of centered around the outcomes of putting myself in that position. And from having that kind of experience through maybe high school golf, college golf, uh, being in the fraternity, being in leadership roles at work, now a new kind of journey I'm on here, it's put me in a position where I've had to be extroverted and I've just gotten a lot more comfortable with it. Whereas, I mean, growing up just was not the case. Through middle school, high school, was not as talkative until I started being put in those leadership roles and just being not necessarily outspoken, but willing to communicate, over communicate really as a leader is necessary. So
Kellen,
I think,
do you have like a trigger or something that makes you want to have that conversation, or like something that you use like as an environmental cue to like get yourself going? Because if you look at the habit loop or the habit, like there's a book that talks about the habit loop and the power of habit. There's a cue or a trigger which leads to the routine, which then becomes a habit. And I think a lot of ways becoming comfortable with being uncomfortable is just a habit. And so I think you have to give yourself
yeah,
that trigger, that cue as to when this is a good time to have a conversation. Like this is a money moment. This is it. Like, I don't know,
yeah.
that
One
or
thing I've always, yeah, I've kind of struggled with, I suppose, is, and I've gotten this feedback quite often in, let's say, training programs for the sales jobs I have. If I'm not extremely passionate about something, it's really hard for me to fake it. And if
mm,
I'm not extremely passionate about something, it's hard for me to project that extroverted side of my personality. So for me, with Gartner's a great example. Now that I've got use cases of how it's helping the individuals I'm working with, how it's taking a guy who's a VP of IT and helping him promote himself to a CIO role, things like that I'm passionate about on the people side. It's easy for me to get passionate about that now. Whereas at the beginning, when I'm just doing, let's say, role plays and sales training, it's really difficult for me to put myself at that same level I'm capable of being at now. So I just think finding those triggers, I don't know that I necessarily have, but I know it's when I'm passionate, I'm extremely capable of being the level of extrovert that I need to be in a leadership role.
yeah. Okay. So through observing, I think, and kind of just like we talked about, being a little bit introverted, but through observing and finding and seeing what people are passionate about, maybe that's your trigger because you're observing and you're learning and you're recognizing, and then it's like, boom, now we get it. Now your passion strikes, and it's like easy going at that point. It's
Yeah.
sailing and everything's good. So
Yeah.
interesting together like that.
So I have a couple of questions for everybody. What, if you think that there is something, made you more outspoken, more of an extrovert? What is something, maybe if it's sports, maybe, just putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, if it was a job, maybe the fraternity, college. I'm sure that there's some,
Recognizing the opportunities that it gives you immediately, right? The
Yeah.
bigger your network, the more powerful you are, the broader your reach. I think instant recognition. That would be my quick answer.
I think mine. That's funny you say that, Leffler, and we're all complimentary of each other's, the ways that we operate in the world, and I think that's cool that you derive it from that sort of a way. I think I'm the opposite. Whereas I think for me, it's patience. It's having the patience to realize it's going to happen over a period of time. And I read this book actually last year called Killing Lies, and it's about when the boy finally suddenly becomes the man and decides it's time to take action, and he's killing the lion as a metaphor for like you have to go out and do something really really tough in this world to realize like what it's all about to be a man and take on that journey, and that's kind of like the hero's journey at that point that you're on. But I think for me, those moments kind of keep building up. It's like there's been like me trying to find the line. What is it? What is that? The meaning behind that, and just those moments starting to add to something more. So.
Yeah.
I like that. Another one is I have a good buddy at work who is in sales, has been in sales before, but he's truly introverted. He's great in his role, but when it comes to his social life outside of work, he only had a handful of friends. And he actually has a fiance, though, who is super extroverted, who has 1,000 friends, 5,000 Instagram followers, things like that. Now, they're perfect together, but he wanted to be more on her level. So he's making himself uncomfortable in order to, I don't want to say satisfy his significant other, but he's just trying to change himself for the better to make himself, I guess, appear more worthy to his significant other. I'm not sure that's something that he needs to do or should do, but he's really focusing on making more friends, being more energetic, having different friend groups. And he and I have had this conversation because she has, 1,000 outlets to turn to for her social life where he only has a few. So he's making himself feel uncomfortable.
That's the ego play. That's the illusion of acceptance there. Like that's you feeling like, you have to do more than you need to in this world to deserve the respect of those around you who are close to you, or who you're, there's always somebody who people want respect from, and they do more than they have to.
One thing I would
I don't think he has to do what he's done, but it kind of shifts the conversation a little bit is towards the networking aspect of social media, which we can get into maybe later, but that's like a completely different realm of networking, which is somewhat like phony networking. Do you really know that many people type of thing? Agreed.
Well, one thing that I think is important is quality over quantity.
Yeah.
Nowadays, just because you have a lot of followers or anything related to that situation, I don't think that has anything to do with it. A lot of those people seem more self-conscious than anything. Like I don't think that should matter, in my opinion. Look, everyone looks at things differently, but if a girl that I'm talking to has 1 million followers, that doesn't mean anything to me. She may be a horrible person. It's more important to me, genuine people making friends with people that actually want to help me, like want me to help them, are able to relate with each other, and are there for each other.
Something that I think with that too, that's tied into the recharging piece that we were talking about, is when I think about just needing to maybe sit in my bed and read a book to get recharged, I think there's this false sense of recharge that comes with getting 1,000 likes on an Instagram photo. And I think it's this endless pursuit.
We're going down a rabbit hole.
We are, but pursuit of needing more. But yeah, I agree. We are.
No, it's a good rabbit hole. We should go down.
You're not wrong.
Let's hear what you have to say.
I knew that would happen, but
yeah, no, I really, truly, that's when I think about how you're recharging. It's so tied into the introverted extroverted conversation, which is so tied into the ease of networking. For some, it seems so easy. For some, it doesn't. When you're recharging, or think you're recharging with something like a social media outlet, which can be a form of networking, I suppose. It's just there's always something more wanted, Connor. We talked about it, I think, yesterday, when someone goes and buys a Ford because Ford is the coolest car on the planet when you're 16. I mean, you can get a Ferrari at 20. You're not going to think the Ford is as cool as you did at 16. Well, when you get the Ferrari at 24, when you get the Range Rover, or when you get the Rolls Royce, I mean, there's always something more. There's always a step up that you're going to be chasing if you're being fulfilled by that.
There's always somebody who's going to be better than you too, and it's all about perspective, and it's all about, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think for me, when I tie that into networking, I had a real tough time in the beginning of, I guess, my career, thinking that networking was a number on LinkedIn, was the number of CIOs that I can connect with. Oh, I talked to so-and-so who's the CEO. Oh, I have this job at this company with this title in the Fortune, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. I don't care if you're working for a paving company or if you're working for Apple at corporate. If it's fulfilling to you, it's going to feel good and feel fulfilling. In the same thing with networking, I've had a lot of very meaningless networking done by me for the wrong sense of fulfillment. Whereas now, as I'm really just looking to understand people and I'm looking to connect with people to just better them and better myself, it's a completely different ballgame, and it's so much easier to truly make connections that last. So I suppose that's tying full circle the rabbit hole we got into, but.
No, you're right. Comparison
Okay,
is the
though.
thief of joy. I just think that people, I mean, you're never going to be the perfect networker, right? You're never going to bat 1,000 when you go and introduce yourself to people, but it's a strength in numbers game. The more people you talk to, the more opportunities you're going to have to establish a deep meaning connection. And the more honest you are with yourself and the more honest you are with the people that you're connecting to, you almost want to have a lower batting average. You want to weed out the people that you don't think you're going to have a good connection with, rather than wasting time trying to build something that may never have had a good foundation to start.
Out of format, I suppose, Steve, a question I have for you guys is, have you had a situation where you've realized the intentions of a person trying to network with you have been poor, and how have you handled it? Because I heard a story the other day from a coworker of mine who's relatively older and had just that, and it was just interesting how he dealt with it. So interested if you guys have experienced that.
I can answer that, if you don't mind. I've had several people, and it's relatively large in Northeast Ohio and probably everywhere. But people see I have a relatively large network within Cleveland, Kent State, locally, downtown Cleveland. And I get approached probably once every 6 months, legitimately, with somebody who wants to be my friend, wants to meet up for a cup of coffee, wants to catch up. But what they're really doing is trying to sign me up for their multi-level marketing or pyramid scheme. I've probably legitimately met up with some guys from school that I thought wanted to just hang out that were actually trying to sign me up for something else. So you realize that their approach was done well, but actually they have a negative, effect of wanting to actually be your friend. They're kind of using you to try to sign up other people and make them money. So you do what you can. You really, you're not interested in the negative actions that they have. Of course, I'm not interested in their program, but you still just try to maintain a healthy relationship and then be the better person, leave on a high note, I suppose.
Yeah.
This all comes back to selling. I mean, we're always like, how important is it to always sell something, even if it's your personal brand, without appearing salesy? Like, we all know that guy who like walks in with too much energy, too much charisma.
Mm-hmm.
He's like he's Mr. Go-Getter. He's like, and he's everything is like, he's all high energy, high octane. He's probably drank like 3 Red Bulls before he hopped in the room, and it's like, all right, buddy, I get your pitch, but like, it just sounds like a fucking pitch.
Right. And that's so funny coming from you, of all people. But I love that you're
I was just going to say that. You beat me to it.
That's funny, but my Red Bulls are avocados, so.
Boom
That's
roasted.
fair.
That's touche.
All right. So one thing that happens to me all the time, and I'm sure it's happened with Leffler pretty often, I get hit up on LinkedIn. That's what happens. People add me on LinkedIn, then they're like, "Hey, I just wanted to talk to you for a few minutes," and I know that I did the same thing, so I can't knock it, but it's how you present yourself. And if you want to learn, let's say, about medical device, understand that you're taking someone's time, and time is invaluable. So just a few minutes, you want to talk to someone about something, add them on LinkedIn. Great. The thing that I find very funny is that people want you to type them a novel, or
they want you to talk. They want to sit back and listen.
Yeah, they don't have a list of questions ready to go. They don't have a knowledge of that company, why it works.
No research, and they just want you to tell you. They want you to talk about what you do and how you do it, rather than coming from the different direction of saying, "Okay, I did X, Y, and Z to research this, and these are my specific questions I have for you."
Yeah, how could they approach you guys? That would be define or describe maybe someone who's approached you that's been effective and that you've enjoyed the conversation. It's been fulfilling for you also.
For me, Leffler, it has to be whenever someone they're on point. They know why they called. They know what they need information wise, and they're just direct and upfront. Hey, I'm interviewing for X, Y, and Z company, medical device. I wanted to get your take on this. I wanted to know why you do it, if you like it, how long you've done it, what you recommend to someone starting off. I want someone that says, here's my phone number. like, can I call you? Would you rather call me? What's the best way to get in contact with you? I just want to use like 3 to 5 minutes of your time. We've all been there.
Somebody that they've done their homework. There's nothing worse than somebody who hasn't done their homework. So somebody that says, I know that you have this background based on your LinkedIn profile. I did the research on this specialty, which it looks like you worked in. I'm interviewing for this specialty with this company, and that's my common bond. And these are the 4 questions that I have already prepared. And obviously, if I have 4 questions, it makes it seem, and I'm talking as somebody that's been approached, and I've approached somebody with this same strategy. I want it to make it seem like it's going to be quick, but I know that it could lead to something way more in depth if we have a pretty instant connection.
Do you feel like it's easy to weed out someone who comes to that conversation
instantly
with sincerity and genuine interest versus feeling like they have to do it?
Well, the funny thing, and I'm sure that this has happened to you, Leffler. I mean, you're asking a guy who's a salesman, what do you think I'm going to do whenever someone calls? I'm going to ask you questions. Why do you want the gig? What's the reason, why did you contact me instead of other people? Yeah. And 95% of the time, the first thing that they say is, well, it's lucrative, right? Like I can make a lot of money.
Yeah.
Low hanging fruit. You know what I even do? I'll ignore them a couple times. Do they really want to talk to me? Or do they want to talk to the first person that, will listen or that they can, If you really try and chase me down to talk to me, I know you want it. And then those are the people that are actually going to have the list of questions.
How important is it to come with a genuine curiosity of like what you're looking to learn about? I mean, you truly have to want to know about that. I mean, we can all point to a time when we've gone into a conversation in our life trying to prove our worth because we thought that person was more important. But then we come back, we think about it, we reflect on it, and we're like, man, if I would have just gone into that conversation looking to truly learn something from that person because they know so much about life and the world, I would have taken so much more from that conversation. Instead, it was all about my ego. How much that I was, how could I prove my worth in this conversation? And it's like, that's a recipe for failure, man. Like,
when your mouth is open, your ears are closed.
And that's one thing that I try just whenever I'm meeting someone for the first time. I want to know all about them. Like, I want to show a genuine interest in them. Yep. And it's something that you can instantly see is it just people light up. I want to know why you do what you do, how, like, what you love. You catch someone's interest by little questions. You really want someone to understand that, look, I genuinely care about you. That's it. I just want to talk to you about a couple things. Look, if it goes nowhere and it's a boring conversation, I'm totally all right with us never talking again. Shoot your shot. The worst that happens is they're like, yeah, I don't want to do this anymore. I got to go. I don't have time. And if someone has a gig that I want.
At that point, Lopez rips his shirt off and he's like, hold on. This is my last resort. I got this.
Yeah, that works in the air all the time.
That rarely works well for me. I can't think of one use case for me that's been a good outcome.
All right. Well, so I have a question for you guys. Where do you feel you should try to network? What is one place where you're like, there's a lot of people there, or, you try to talk to people, whether you want to or not? What would you say? Or no one answer.
I'm a big fan of internal networking within organizations, and I think people too often view networking as an outside network. For me, working in a company with 15,000 employees, and we have an event every year in Orlando I go to for a week, I've made a point the last 2 years there to set up conversations or meetings or really any way to interact with somebody from the company who's in a role that I eventually want to have. So I think it's often neglected internally networking. So anytime you're at a company event, because automatically you've got a right to speak to the person, you're a coworker. It's not weird for you to ask questions about professional development, about career progression, things like that. It's not uncomfortable, regardless of your personality type. So I think too often we get caught up in the idea that networking means going to some outside event, whereas internally in your organization is the best place to start, in my opinion.
So what, you walk up to somebody and you're like, hi, my name's Ryan. I want your job. Does that go well for you?
I personally, yeah, I've got.
I know. I'm
yeah,
just kidding.
n-
No, I think it's
to your
like
point though.
Lopez too could relate to that though with our big national sales meetings. He loves going around and meeting people internally.
But you guys probably do, and this is, I think, the way that I view it at least. Anytime I set those conversations up, I do what the people you respond to via LinkedIn message, the ones with 4 points they want to cover,
Yeah.
why they want to cover them, and the outcome that I'm looking for.
Absolutely.
I'd be sure to set the exact same way. I set things up that way, or I know they're
And-
not going to spend their time with me.
How are
and
you guys
and how
identifying-
instantly responsive are they to that when you come, clearly prepared?
Extremely, because
Exactly.
it's something they're not experiencing.
Exactly.
How are you guys identifying the smartest person in the room? I think oftentimes because they're probably the ones who aren't saying that much.
Data. To me, it's data. So I think all of our companies, for the most part, are relatively large. And for me, it took a while digging and trying to find, we call them stack rankings, but I just found the person who was most successful. She happens to be the rep for Chevron, for the Chevron account. And she kills it. She hits what we call Eagle. So our biggest accomplishment globally year over year. I just shot her an email with kind of similar to what you guys were talking about. Why do I want to talk to her? What's going to be accomplished and what do I want to talk to her about? We talked for 15 minutes face to face over a coffee, and now I've got a bi-monthly conversation with her set up. So
What is
I
she
decided,
doing differently? I'm curious to know.
it's so funny. I think for me, what I'm finding time and time again, people are extremely intelligent if they're differentiated to that level globally in a sales organization. They have an intellect that's above others, especially in a complex sale like this. But there's just no duplication for hard work. There's no duplication for doing the right things every single time and never feeling like you're too good for the fundamentals, especially in sales.
That's beautiful. I love that answer. We talked about
I mean-
the other day. We brought it back to Steve. You'll love this. We brought it back to like if it's we love going to the gym. It's fun. Exercising is great. It releases endorphins, all that science. But like, dude, if you're not getting your marks, hitting your marks, like 225 seems really heavy or 270, whatever you bench. Why don't you strip the bars back off and go to 135 and perfect it? Like, I think that's so important. Working and all falls back.
Yeah, we heard the ocean breeze a little bit. I don't know
Sorry.
why. It cut out a little bit. If you want to,
Yeah. Point the camera to the ocean. We appreciate it.
Actually, flip the camera up. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, thank you.
Did you miss my point? Should I
yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
Go ahead, one more
Yeah.
time.
I think Ryan made an amazing point when he said it all comes back to fundamentals, no matter how big in an organization you are. I said everybody loves exercise. Usually successful people too. They love exercise. It releases endorphins. There's this whole rush and response that it gives you. But just think about like when you're trying to reach your new goals and you're like on a bench press, for example, when you're trying to go up in weight, but it's just not working. Well, I think in that situation, you got to strip the bar back down, focus on the fundamentals, and get it right at the weight you can perfect for 5-10 reps. And it's just like life. You just go back to the basics and the drawing board. Maybe what you learned at the start will help you to finish it off. So.
Yeah, being completely unafraid of removing the ego from the situation is just what I've seen time and time again.
Absolutely.
How about you guys?
The one place
Well,
I was going to say that I 100% always try to meet as many people as possible is the airport.
That's interesting. I like that.
Whenever I've been on a plane, I talk to the guys next to me. I talk to the people around me. I talk to the people waiting in line. I make myself feel uncomfortable. I mean, what is one thing you can do to relate? How long did it take to get to the airport? You know what I mean? You're just trying to find something common that people can respond to. You have a million. You're waiting on your flight. Is this your first flight? Just think of unanswered questions where you can spark a conversation. Oh my gosh, I'm so exhausted. I had to be up at this time to get here. This was so long. And I find it fascinating because I've met so many CEOs that sit in the seat right next to me. So many account managers, so many managers overall that give me their cards, guys that started companies. And is that all I'm looking for? No. I also want to have a great conversation with people. You never know who you're going to meet. Just like we talked about in the last video, the guy that sent me a couple books, his name's Bud. Great guy. I sent him a card back thanking him for the books. I'm going to have to read them. It's just interesting to me because you're all in the same boat. You're all just trying to get to the next place. You know, maybe there are going to be people that don't want to talk to you, but might as well try.
Interesting. How important do you think, just from a communication standpoint, it is when you're talking to these people to appeal to the kid inside of that person? I think everybody, everybody's still a kid who just grows into an adult's body. And so when I'm trying to identify what makes this person tick, and I'm really trying to learn something new, I'm like, what would make that person light up as if they were a kid and imagining the world and having it their way? And if you can get that person to laugh or cry or just, just something joyful, man.
You're trying to get
gotta
people.
go. What's that?
I said you're trying to get people to cry at the airport.
Actually, yeah, that'd be pretty amazing. That's a really big connection. And if you can make them cry laughing so hard, that's probably the best way to do it. But if you tell them an emotional story that appeals to something greater, I mean, that's all. Yeah, no, dude, crying is a huge emotional connection. I'm actually like that.
Right.
Dead serious. I mean, that's a deep level. Like, we're not probably doing that at the airport, but with connecting in general and communication in general. So.
Yeah.
I love it. Just the external networking, as we're talking about now. At our age, there are like the young executive, young professional networking groups. I've attended some of those. The idea of going to that, though, is if you meet somebody within their 20s or early 30s who's taking the effort to go to something like that, you're really probably going to surround yourself by good people who have the same goals as you do. So I think that that's important. And then just maintaining, of course, relationships with people throughout life who are trying to make themselves better or have had some form of success, which at an older age becomes like the country club thing. All sorts of guys, all sorts of business happens on the golf course because they're surrounding themselves with other successful people. So maintaining networking, I guess, in that realm of that aspect of things, of trying to network with people who are on a higher level.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And I think, you can really find networking in any location, wherever you are. You can always meet someone that, maybe you can help them out. There was a gentleman I met at the gym who was wearing scrubs, and I just went up to him and tried talking to him. I thought maybe he was a doc or maybe he was a rep. So we started talking. One thing led to another. Him and I went and grabbed lunch. Come to find out, he's a spine rep out here. And then, we became pretty good friends, and he lost his job. And later on, I was able to get him a job with Medtronic. So, it doesn't have to be a one-sided thing. I'm not always trying to meet people and just help myself. If I can help someone else in the same situation, that's more important to me, to make sure that we're all succeeding. One of the motivational speakers I listen to, he talks about succeed and then put your hand back and help someone else. So I think that that's really important.
That's really powerful.
I like that a lot.
I think that's really powerful. And here's an example. I like this one. So there's a John Maxwell book on leadership that talks about being at the like like a dinner table where everybody's connecting. But like,
leaders eat last.
That's a big one, Simon Sinek. So if you're all at the table and you're at a group outing, right? Like, and I had this example the other day when I was at a social, and I was at a table with about 4 people, and somebody walks in who wasn't a part of the conversation, and they looked like almost like a bit of an outcast, like nobody was talking to them. And I brought the guy in, and I said, like, hey, what's your name? His name is Kyle. Turns out Kyle is an extremely interesting dude. He's a Fox 8. He's a videographer for the news for Fox 8 in Chicago. And he's got these crazy stories about how he just went to South Side of Chicago. He was filming down there in the crazy streets where if a guy looked in the street the wrong way, he might get shot. And it's like, he's been internationally traveling and just all these crazy cool stories. And I invited him to the table of connections. And I was just like, I didn't really expect anything out of that, but I got a lot out of it. Like, that was great, So.
Yeah. So I hear Leffler's car, so I don't know if he wants to talk. You got anything going, Leffler?
No, it's just not windy out anymore, so I got my hand on the gun ready to draw if I need to.
Well, let's hear it. Where do you think is a good place to network? How do you capitalize?
I think everybody hit on everything. Personally, my networking style is I'd rather give 10 times before I ask for one, because I think it all comes full circle. So I'd rather help before I ever ask. That's just my personal. I actually enjoy helping others, and I want to see everybody that I interact with be as successful as possible. And there's 5 of us, and we probably all have 5 definitions of what success is to us individually.
Yeah.
Well, that person wants to reciprocate anyway. They want to like help you out anyways because you help them. So it's like now you got
Sure, but I don't expect it. If nothing ever comes back from it, so be it. But
no. And the best thing about it is you're not expecting it.
Sure.
That's the magic behind it, is that it might just happen. So
Yeah.
And it could be a lifelong thing. You're going to help somebody, Steve, you say put your hand back, or you help somebody. They can help you, and you can help them 15 more times in your life.
Yeah, I would agree. One thing that I find very interesting is being confident. No matter who you're networking with, like you, Ryan, you were talking about how you met that woman and she was one of the top reps in the nation. You know, you had to build some type of confidence. Even, it doesn't matter, introvert, extrovert, that doesn't mean anything. You had to build the confidence to go out and talk to her. Whenever you're in a situation, when you're with people, you have to be confident in the way that you present yourself. You know, people aren't going to take you serious unless you are confident and willing to present yourself in a very understanding manner.
I think for me, what I found too, with that being a great point, as I kind of talked about earlier, trying to find different ways to push myself to be a little bit more extroverted or a little bit more talkative, it comes from passion for me. I think confidence comes from that as well. And the other thing is that I've just been reading the last year and a half a lot on Stoicism, and there's a Ryan Holiday quote where he says, everything is either good or necessary. So being able to take from that and consistently telling myself in situations like, okay, maybe that was a little uncomfortable, a little awkward, not terribly like you to be that outgoing. Well, big deal. Move on. Next one. If you're the type of person who struggles to be extremely outgoing, who struggles with networking or maybe even non-organic networking, kind of like Tyler mentioned, the networking sessions or like the lunches or happy hours that you can go to, they're tough and they can beat you down if you feel like maybe you didn't say the right thing to the right person or you didn't leave with any connection. So if you just keep telling yourself that it's either good or necessary, there's no bad. It's going to help you moving forward. Just gain that confidence and the understanding that, I mean, I'm growing from every situation. So that's helped me a lot, at least, not being that personality type to necessarily always be that outgoing.
Colin, I become fully engaged and present when I'm in uncomfortable situations because I'm forced to. It's a fight or flight response. Like, no joke. So you're with this executive who's big time and has proven herself in so many ways. And it's like, how can you not have energy and flow in that moment? Like, you look, all of a sudden, you guys have had this conversation, you look and 30, 45 minutes has gone by, you didn't even think about checking the clock. Like, yeah. That's engagement. That's full flow, like right there. And I think that just goes to show you when you put yourself in that uncomfortable situation, oftentimes that's where the magic is. That's the money.
I think that's why we're all in sales too. That feeling of just that flow state of knowing exactly what you want to say, and 45 minutes later, it's like
you got it.
I didn't really even have to think through the situation that just occurred. It came out naturally. That's why I think the passion thing for me is so important.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to finish up the call right there. We're at 48 minutes, went a little bit over. One thing I wanted to finish up with is you guys giving me a quote. Just one of your favorite quotes again. I'm sure that you have one. If you don't, you could look one up real quick.
I do, but I have it written down. Hang on.
Yeah, no problem. I will start it off. I'll show you guys in a second. The quote that I picked is, some people dream of success while others wake up and work hard at it. And it's Napoleon Hill. And the reason why I chose that is I just got a new journal. I usually journal about what I'm doing for the day, what I'm trying to accomplish. That way I can kind of have a list of things that I'm doing. With my job, I don't really have a manager, so I need to hold myself accountable. So I need to make sure that I'm getting my stuff done. I have a manager.
I hope Dave listens to this one day.
So I put that on the outside of my journal because every day that I wake up, I want to look at it and I want to hold myself accountable. Some people dream of success, but others work hard at it. So it's one that really hit home for me. You guys have anything on
No,
that?
think and grow rich.
I've got a short one, just a little Latin phrase that I've been really thinking about constantly. And as I move into this leadership role, we have like that. Yeah, right. I'm gonna carpe the diem today. No, I'm probably gonna botch the pronunciation, but amor fati, AMORFATI, love of fate. So just again on the topic of stoicism, it's just been so instrumental for me in a sales role, especially the ability to just persevere. For me, being in a sales role where I can go $230,000 negative from losing an account and have to bounce back from that, it's tough. So that's been a pretty cool, I don't know if it's necessarily a quote, but something to constantly think about for myself throughout this year. And I'm going to make that a point next year, is just loving fate. It is what it is. It's either good or necessary. So
Awesome. Meekins, I'm sure you have 45. Just one.
You know me too well, Steve. It's the one I shared with you the other day. I think it's appropriate. It's not what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for certain that just ain't true. And that's Mark Twain. So, it's the thing that you're so stuck to in your belief that when you ask people, it's more so to just validate that belief in the first place and to argue your point until you beat it into the ground. So it just goes to show you go into those conversations open-minded, looking to learn something all the time, because you can always have your opinions reworked and be a little bit better.
Yeah, that's deep.
I like that.
yeah.
Leffler, you got one?
No, I don't really, to be honest with you. I liked Ryan's quote, and it made me think of, I always say it is what it is. I don't know where that comes from, but people let negativity get themselves down too much, and you cannot change the past. So I have no idea if that's a quote from.
I love that.
It's a Leffler
I
quote.
really do.
Sure. I
love
no,
that.
I never invent the wheel. I always just use somebody else's regurgitated material. But
Well, Connor, how funny is this? Last night, Connor and I are talking, and I said things that are cliche are often made fun of, but they're cliche for a reason.
sure, yeah,
Something's not going to be cliche if it's not a good point.
Yeah, man. How important is Nike? How much of a shaper was Nike in the world of sports and just inspiring people? Just do it, man. Just do it. What? Just do it? That's your motto?
That's it. Okay.
Well, you just took Tyler's quote, so.
No.
Let's hear it.
Mine, I have a list of stuff. This actually was brought up in church, but the old Albert Einstein actually, which will filter into helping network with other people, kind of no matter what, putting a hand out. His quote was, "If you judge a fish by how it can climb a tree, it's going to live its whole life thinking it's stupid," or a variation of that. Certain people can do certain things. So helping people get to where they need to be, but I guess finding their traits and their best talents.
Take that.
Recategorize.
Yeah, I like that.
Good stuff.
Interesting. Yeah. Thought-provoking, man.
Definitely. And if anyone has any comments, please leave them below. We will get back to it next week. I appreciate you guys all getting on the call. Again, we're all over the place, just a group of friends trying to all connect and help each other grow. Hopefully we could help one person. That's all we try to do. Well, that is it. I'm going to let you guys go. I will see you later.
Shout out Cowan's beard for joining today. That was a big power play there.
Go shave.